So at first glance, it might seem like the absolute worst time to be talking about a book about fun, given the fact that we are in year 3 of a global pandemic and many people are feeling like fun is the last thing they possibly could devote attention to. So what I've come to conclude from researching and writing this book, which by the way, I did through the whole pandemic, I signed the book contract in April 2020. So it's very much a pandemic project. But my conclusion has been that we're really thinking about this wrong, that we typically think of fun as something that we can only have or experience when things are already going well. But what I've come to realize is that the opposite is true. Actually, fun can boost our resilience and our spirits in a way that makes it easier for us to cope with whatever life may throw our way, whether it's a global pandemic or anything else. So I think that we really need to rethink how we think about fun, less as this treat that we get to have only if everything's already going great, and more as actually almost like a tool that we can tap into to help ourselves weather the challenges that life may present us with. One of the more interesting things that I stumbled upon when I was trying to write a book about fun is that there's actually not a very good definition out there of what fun truly is. So to back up for a second, my last book was called How to Break Up with Your Phone, which was all about creating better boundaries with our devices. And the ultimate message of that book was that our lives are what we pay attention to. And every time we make a decision in the moment about how we spend our attention, we're making a much broader decision about our lives. No pressure, right? So I felt pretty good about that conclusion. But what I hadn't realized at that point is that the next step is to choose what you actually want to spend your attention on. And I came to conclude I'd gotten so used to just filling my own time with mindless distractions on my devices that I no longer knew what I wanted to do with my time. Had a little bit of an existential crisis as a result of that realization. But I ended up asking myself this question that I asked people when I was researching how to break up with your phone. And that question was, what's something you always say you want to do, but you supposedly don't have time for? And my answer to that question was, well, I want to learn how to play guitar. Like I have a guitar, it's literally sitting right over there as I speak to you. I never learned how to play it. So I signed up for this guitar class, adult guitar class, Wednesday nights, BYOB, very laid back. And when I went to the class, I started feeling this feeling of buoyancy and energy that really kept my spirits raised for the rest of the week. And I thought, this is really interesting. Like, what is this feeling that I'm experiencing? And I realized that the best word to describe it was fun. But I also realized if you look up the definition of fun in the dictionary, it's pleasure. And there was something much deeper going on. I felt this real sense of connection with the people I was with. I was very much in flow, and we weren't doing it for any purpose. It was just for play. And it really was moving me deeply. All that is to say that I realized I had to come up with my own definition of fun. And based on my own experiences and based on the feedback and the anecdotes that were shared with me by thousands of people around the world, I came up with the idea that fun, or as I call it, true fun, is the confluence of 3 psychological states. It's playfulness, connection, and flow. So playfulness in the sense that you're doing things just for the sake of doing them and you're not caring too much about the outcome, right? We were playing guitar, not for performance, believe me, but just for the fun of it. And then connection, I think, is a fundamental element of fun because in the vast majority of situations or anecdotes people have shared with me, another person or another creature is involved. There's also cases in which you can be truly connected to an activity or to your authentic self or to your body, but often there's a person, even for introverts. And then flow is the psychological state in which you get so absorbed in your present experience that you lose track of time, like an athlete in the midst of a game or a musician playing a piece of music, or even when you're in the middle of a really engaging conversation. And the important point here is that flow is very different from what's known as junk flow, which is the passive state we get into when we're just consuming content. So all those states are great on their own, but I've come to conclude that when we are having what people describe as fun, true fun, those 3 elements are present. It's playful, connected, flow. And that's what was happening in my guitar class. And then when I asked people to share these anecdotes with me about their own experiences of fun, and then subsequently asked, would the words playful, connected, flow apply to what you just told me? The vast majority of people in my sample said yes. So that is what I define as true fun. One of the things I noticed when I was looking into figuring out a definition of what I refer to now as true fun is that the fact that we have not had a very good definition of fun means that we have been using them very carelessly, almost sloppily in our everyday speech. We talk about all things, all sorts of things as fun, from like a dinner party that actually really wasn't that fun at all to doing something for fun that if you reflect upon it actually wasn't, like wasting time on social media. And in other words, we're very vulnerable to any company or marketer who wants to tell us that their product or activity is quote unquote fun, and we will just go along with that without really thinking about it, even though the experience and the feelings that result from some of these activities are very different from this feeling of playful connected flow that I got when I asked people to share experiences from their own lives that they described as having been so fun. So I came up for a term for the activities and the products that are marketed to us as fun, but that aren't actually playful connected flow. And that term is fake fun. And the reason I think it's important to be able to distinguish between true fun and fake fun is that once you are able to give something a label, it becomes a lot easier to make better decisions about how you allocate your time. One thing I really want to highlight, though, is that when I say fake fun, I'm really referring to passive consumption that goes on for too long that makes you feel gross afterwards, or any activity that essentially leaves you feeling as if you've binged on junk food, stuff that you find yourself consuming in excess, but then you feel disgusting afterwards. So there's true fun, there's fake fun. But the important thing to keep in mind before people start pushing back on the idea that I'm telling them that watching their favorite TV show is not fun is that there's also a middle category of things that we really do enjoy, that are relaxing or nourishing, or that we look forward to. And we should keep doing those things too. It's just that we don't want to allow those things to cross the line over into fake fun territory, because that's how they're designed. In other words, if you're watching your favorite show, you might really love watching it for 2 or 3 episodes. The fact that it keeps playing on autoplay without even giving you a chance to reach for the remote means that you're much more likely to tip over into fake fun territory. I don't know if reading 300 pages about the power of fun is really fun. I hope it is, but I think my bigger hope is that it will actually be thought-provoking. I mean, I think I posed some challenging questions in there, and I should warn people straight up. There's a whole chapter that's titled Why You Feel Dead Inside, with a reminder of your mortality. So it's not like it's all just fun. But I mean, I like having fun when I write. So I tried to make it as personal and as lively as possible. But B, my ultimate hope is that it'll help people think about their own lives differently and give them suggestions that they can take or leave or play with that will enable them to understand why fun is so important, why it shouldn't be at the bottom of our priority list. It should be at the top, and then start to make concrete changes to their own lives to build in more opportunities for playful connected flow, or, and this is very true right now in the pandemic when we are quite restricted, to appreciate the moments of playful connected flow that are around us all the time, every day. You value things and are able to think more intelligently about them if you have names for them. I think that making a point of noticing moments of playfulness, noticing moments of connection, and noticing moments of flow really can go a long way in helping us benefit psychologically from the moments of fun that we are already experiencing. For example, right now, I'm getting a chance to connect with you and the audience about my book that I wrote. That's amazing. That's actually quite fun. I'm definitely in playful connected flow, but without kind of giving it a name or labeling it, I don't think I necessarily would appreciate it as much. Instead, my brain would do the natural brain thing of kind of focusing on the negative, because that is evolutionarily a benefit, to be able to always scan the environment for threats. We are constantly on high alert, but that's very stressful and anxiety producing. So one of my hopes for the book, in addition to it being a fun read, but one of the benefits I've also seen for myself is that it helps us shift away from our natural tendency to focus on the negative and actually begin to appreciate some of the other stuff that's much more positive that happens all the time, even in difficult times. And I should also say, I'm not a Pollyanna at all. I'm very cynical and prone to existentialism, but for me, it's been enormously helpful. And I would think if it's helpful for someone like me, it would be even more helpful if your natural inclination is to be a positive, sunny person. So the structure of the book is that it starts with an investigation and an exploration into what fun actually is, because as I mentioned, there's really no good definition of it. And then it moves on to a look into why it's good for us, which I think is fascinating. I'm a science journalist by background, and I never would have thought fun was good for us. But in fact, by lowering our stress levels and making us feel more connected to the other people and creatures in our lives and a number of other things, it actually is enormously good, not just for our emotional and mental health, but also our physical health. So I lay out the case for that, to try to elevate fun from something that we consider an afterthought to something that we truly internalize is worth our attention and time. And I lay out this definition of playful connected flow. In the second half of the book, I wanted to help put these ideas into practice. Great. I believe fun is playful connected flow. How the heck are you supposed to create more of that for yourself? So the whole second half of the book is a step-by-step plan to help people identify what brings them into a state of playful connected flow, because what does it for me may be different from what does it for you, and then actually build more opportunities for those moments into their lives. So I created this framework I called SPARK, which is short for making space, pursuing passions, attracting fun, rebelling, which is very fun, and keeping at it. And I give suggestions for each of these elements so that people can put them into practice and try to generate more opportunities for fun in their everyday lives, whether they're doing something exotic and traditionally fun, like going on vacation. Great, but I want you to be able to have more fun when you're stuck at home as well. My daughter is already on my case about my book. During one of the more stressful moments of writing the book, my 6-year-old daughter said to me, "Mama, you're writing a book about fun, but you don't seem to be having fun." And fair enough, in that particular moment, was not, but it was a really good reminder, because I think that even I was like focusing on the challenge and the struggle of writing a book instead of taking my own message to heart in that moment and trying to find those moments of playful connected flow. So it's very helpful to have my daughter say that, but she's a master at fun. And she's also very good at telling adults to put down their phones. She's been known to just hand out copies of my book, How to Break Up with Your Phone, including to my husband, which is pretty funny. So she's a good advocate. It's been interesting to me to see that my books have been leading into each other. Before these two books, I wrote a book called Vitamania, How Vitamins Revolutionize the Way We Think About Food, which was an exploration into something we take for granted. So in that way, it was connected. But it's been interesting to me that How to Break Up with Your Phone did lead directly to the power of fun, because once I started to create better boundaries with my device, not just devices, as I mentioned before, I ended up with all this free time. That led to the power of fun. So now people are asking me about the third book in this series, to which I say, give an author a break here, guys. This just came out. I'm tired. I'm trying to have more fun myself. I'm totally serious about that, because it is really exhausting. It is so exhausting to write and launch a book. But one thing that I've been enjoying is trying to figure out, all right, now that I've really thought about fun in a very analytical and intellectual way and tried to make this as practical as possible, I want to give myself the space and time to have more of it myself. I already am having a fair amount of fun considering the restrictions of the pandemic. But I remember I had this neighbor when I was growing up. I grew up in New York in this building that had a lot of old artists, like really interesting. Like his sister was married to one of the Gershwins, and he actually inspired the song, You Say Tomato, I Say Tomato, like a crazy, interesting building. And there was this very old neighbor who had been a Ziegfeld Follies girl. And I remember that she said to me one day in the lobby, "Darling, you need to lay fallow once in a while." And that always stood out to me. It's not my strong suit at all. But right now, I would actually really like to lay fallow and see what comes next. I will say that my favorite kind of writing, which I did work into this book, but I'd like to do more of, is writing firsthand personal essays that make people laugh and make them think a little bit differently about their own lives by laughing at my experiences and ridiculous adventures. So I would love to be in a position where the world's open enough to be able to go and do more stuff, and then to be able to write more of this type of essay to share with people, in hopes that by helping them to see the world differently and laugh, I can inspire them to live their own lives more fully. So I would say that's the goal. But fallow, need to practice that. I'm happy to say that I have fun very regularly. And I should also say we're speaking during the Omicron wave, and I am very COVID cautious. So I'm like really very restricted right now. But I would say I had fun going ice skating with my daughter just like a week ago. I also had a lot of fun when a friend of mine from my guitar class, who's already had Omicron, so I feel like he's kind of safe, we tested, and then he gave me a blues guitar lesson the other day, and I had a ton of fun doing that. And we actually just adopted a dog, not a pandemic puppy, she's older, but my husband and I have been having a lot of true fun connecting with this little creature. So I would say just in the past week, I'm happy to say, like a number of different moments of playful connected flow. And all that is to say, I think it's possible. I will also say, though, the one thing that I did take away from my book that might be useful to anyone listening is that, when you're a kid, fun does happen more spontaneously. There's more opportunities for fun that just come to you when you're a kid, probably because you're more playful by nature. You're not yet a perfectionist. You're not yet self-critical. You haven't yet been trained to consider nothing worth doing unless it's in exchange for money. right? But also because you don't really have that many responsibilities because someone's taking care of you. So as adults, it does take effort to prioritize fun. It does take effort and conversations with your spouse to create time for each of you to have it. It does take some effort to think back on your own life, to reflect on what activities and people and settings typically generate fun for you, and then actually make space for those. But I am here to say that it is so worth it. You will be happier, you'll be healthier, you'll be more productive and creative and more resilient. And perhaps most importantly of all, you will have more fun. So that's what I hope people will take away from this book. It can be a real challenge to try to fabricate fun, especially if in a group workplace setting. And I'm not going to claim to have the perfect answer to that, because I do think that fun is much like romance, that if you try to force it too much, it's not going to happen. What you can do, though, is set the stage for it, light the candles for fun and hope that it will come in. I think if you're in a leadership role, one thing that really actually is conducive to fun is to allow your humanity to show. So to back up, when we are having fun, one of the prerequisites is that you're not putting on a facade. You are actually expressing your authentic self. You are laughing with people. You're letting down your guard and letting go a bit. That is not something that often happens in a professional culture. So I think anyone in a leadership position who's able to make a joke at their own expense, or just have a more kind of lighthearted, less professional, less jargony kind of attitude, that's actually going to help. I wouldn't necessarily do this on a Zoom call, but one thing I found helpful in personal life is actually to create what I consider to be playgrounds for fun or props for fun. A playground for fun, don't freak out everybody out there who's a grown up and is like, I am not going on monkey bars. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about structures that facilitate fun in the form of letting people let down their guard a bit. So in your personal life, it basically is anything you can do to get people engaged in doing something together, so that they're not just going to fall into the same ruts of talking about the pandemic or politics or whatever it may be. One thing I found useful in my own life is actually to leave out a bowl of conversation prompts on our table, even though we don't have anyone over for dinner right now, we just use them ourselves. But just little things like, what was your go-to outfit when you're a teenager? That's kind of a fun one to ask in multiple generations. Or what's a song that always makes you happy? Just these little prompts that give people something else to grab onto and interact with each other in a different way. In terms of props, just a couple examples that I found useful in my own life. It's just things that get people to interact differently with each other. So for example, you might have noticed I have a friendship bracelet on my wrist. I'm 43. Why do I have a friendship bracelet on my wrist? Well, that's because I organized a friend camp this past summer for friends and their families during a pretty good moment in the pandemic. Lots of testing. And I just left out a box of embroidery floss and a hula hoop. And I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to do anything with this. Like, there's a bunch of people in their 40s, maybe the kids. No, I looked over, there was a whole group of adults making friendship bracelets, men and women, making friendship bracelets and just chatting with each other in a way that was very different and never would have happened if they'd just been having let's sit down and talk. And similarly, people just started hula hooping. Like, the least likely person you would have thought would have been interested in that hula hoop was definitely hula hooping and getting people to teach him how to do it. So all that is to say, I think that if we're able to provide people with little opportunities to interact with each other in different ways and as more human, like on a more human level, that's really helpful. And if you are able to see each other in person, that's also very helpful. Another thing I would suggest, just as kind of just things to think about in the workplace or beyond, is starting a delight practice, which is a way to introduce what I call a fun mindset, which is just shifting your attitude to be more appreciative of opportunities for playful connected flow that already exist. And to do that, very simple, all you do is notice things in your environment that bring you any kind of delight. And it does not need to be profound or awe-inspiring. It could be like a funny squirrel, or a friend of mine texted me a picture of ice crystals on his windshield, and it said delight. And I think that actually could be a nice thing that doesn't feel onerous or like trying too hard in a workplace culture, to just suggest that you spend a week sharing delights with each other. And you could do that on Slack. You could do that, whatever you use for workplace communication, a text chain. But I have to say, I think that's an excellent use of technology, because it actually brings people closer, gives them something positive to notice in their lives. And it is self-reinforcing. Like, every time, my friend could have said, oh, it's cold out. He lives in Boston. I haven't seen him in 2 years. Like, darn, I've got to scrape the ice off of my windshield. This is so annoying. And instead, because we've had this delight chain going on for a while, he thought those are really beautiful. And he took a picture and he sent it to me. And when I got it, I got a sense of delight. So I would say that is another suggestion that's very easy to implement in a workplace setting or elsewhere.